Imagine a land where the call to prayer, once echoing through vibrant bazaars and ancient cities, was silenced by force. Picture a people whose faith, woven into the very fabric of their culture, was systematically stripped away under the weight of an authoritarian regime. This was the reality for millions of Muslims in Central Asia during the Soviet era, a period marked by a relentless campaign to erase Islamic identity from public and private life. Welcome to the sands of history, where we uncover the untold stories of resilience, resistance, and revival. Join us as we explore the Soviet suppression of Islam in Central Asia, a saga of cultural erasure and enduring faith. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more historical deep dives, and please consider supporting us financially through the links in the description to help us continue bringing these stories to light. Town. Historical context. Central Asia. Under Soviet rule. Central Asia, encompassing modern-day Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, and Tajikistan, has been a cradle of Islamic civilization for centuries. From the Silk Road cities of Bukhara and Samarkand to the scholarly traditions of the region, Islam was not just a religion, but a way of life, shaping art, education, and governance. However, the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917 and the subsequent establishment of Soviet control in the 1920s brought a seismic shift. The Soviet Union, driven by Marxist-Leninist ideology, viewed religion, particularly Islam, as a threat to its vision of a secular socialist society. Khalid, 2007. The Soviets aimed to create a new Soviet man, free from the backward influences of religion and tradition. In Central Asia, this meant targeting Islam, which was deeply embedded in the region's social and cultural structures. The campaign to suppress Islamic identity was multifaceted, involving the closure of mosques, imprisonment of religious leaders, banning of religious practices, and the promotion of atheism. This systematic assault not only disrupted religious life, but also sought to redefine the very identity of Central Asian Muslims. The closure of mosques, silencing sacred spaces. One of the most visible signs of Soviet suppression was the closure, destruction, or repurposing of mosques. By the late 1920s, the Soviet authorities launched an aggressive anti-religious campaign, targeting Islamic institutions as symbols of resistance to communist ideology. Thousands of mosques were shuttered across Central Asia. According to historian Adeeb Khalid, by the 1930s, the number of functioning mosques in the region had plummeted from an estimated 26,000 in 1912 to fewer than 1,000. Khalid, 2007. Many mosques were converted into secular spaces, warehouses, cinemas, or administrative buildings. The iconic Bibi-Khanym Mosque in Samarkand, once a center of Islamic learning, was left in ruins, while others were demolished outright. This desecration of sacred spaces was not merely practical, but symbolic, signaling the state's intent to erase Islam from public life. For Central Asians, the loss of mosques was a profound blow, as these spaces served as community hubs for worship, education, and social gatherings. Imprisonment of clerics, silencing the voices of faith. The Soviet regime also targeted the ulama, Islamic scholars and clerics, who were seen as influential figures capable of rallying resistance. Thousands of clerics were arrested, exiled, or executed during the purges of the 1920s and 1930s. The Soviet secret police, the NKVD, labeled religious leaders as counter-revolutionaries or enemies of the state, accusing them of spreading anti-Soviet propaganda. Keller, 2001. For example, in Uzbekistan, prominent scholars like Imam Muhammad ibn Yusuf al-Bukhari were imprisoned or disappeared, leaving communities without spiritual guidance. The removal of clerics disrupted the transmission of Islamic knowledge, as madrasahs, Islamic schools, were either closed or repurposed as secular institutions. By 1940, only a handful of officially sanctioned clerics remained, tightly controlled by the state's spiritual administration of the Muslims of Central Asia and Kazakhstan, Sadum, which was established to monitor and regulate Islamic activities, TAZA, 2017. Banning religious practices, erasing Islam from daily life. Beyond physical spaces and leadership, the Soviets sought to eliminate Islamic practices from everyday life. Religious rituals, such as daily prayers, fasting during Ramadan, and the Hajj pilgrimage were heavily restricted or outright banned. The public performance of Islamic rites was labeled superstition and could result in imprisonment or social ostracism. Women were discouraged from wearing the hijab, and traditional Islamic dress was replaced with Soviet-approved attire as part of the emancipation campaign aimed at reshaping gender roles. Northrop, 2004. The Soviet state also targeted Islamic education. Arabic, the language of the Quran, was replaced with Cyrillic scripts, and religious texts were confiscated or destroyed. By the 1930s, the teaching of Islam was limited to a few state-controlled madrasahs, where the curriculum was heavily censored. These measures aimed to sever the younger generation from their religious heritage, replacing Islamic values with Soviet propaganda. Roy, 2000. The role of propaganda and atheism. To fill the void left by the suppression of Islam, the Soviets launched aggressive atheist campaigns. The League of the Militant Godless, an organization dedicated to promoting atheism, was active in Central Asia, distributing anti-religious literature and organizing public lectures denouncing Islam. Posters and films portrayed religious believers as backward or dangerous, while schools indoctrinated children with Marxist ideology. The goal was to replace religious identity with a Soviet one, rooted in loyalty to the state. Khalid, 2007. However, these efforts often met with resistance. Many Central Asians continued to practice Islam in secret, holding clandestine prayer gatherings or teaching religious texts in private homes. This underground practice, known as parallel Islam, became a form of quiet defiance against Soviet oppression. TAZA, 2017. Impact on Central Asian society. The suppression of Islamic identity had profound social and cultural consequences. The closure of mosques and madrasahs disrupted community cohesion, as these institutions had been central to social life. The loss of religious leaders and texts weakened the intellectual tradition of Islam in the region, leading to a decline in theological scholarship. Moreover, the imposition of Soviet cultural norms, such as the promotion of Russian language and secular education, created a sense of alienation among Central Asians who felt their identity was under attack. Northrop, 2004. Yet, the Soviet campaign was not entirely successful. Islam, deeply rooted in Central Asian culture, proved resilient. Families preserved religious traditions in private, passing down prayers and rituals through oral traditions. Sufi brotherhoods, which operated underground, played a significant role in maintaining spiritual practices. By the 1980s, as Soviet control weakened, there was a noticeable revival of Islamic identity, with mosques reopening and religious expression re-emerging in public life. Roy, 2000. Resistance and resilience. Despite the Soviet regime's efforts, Central Asians found ways to resist. Underground mosques operated in remote villages, and secret religious schools continued to teach Islamic principles. Women in particular played a crucial role in preserving religious knowledge, often teaching children in the absence of formal institutions. The resilience of Islam in Central Asia is a testament to the strength of cultural and religious identity in the face of oppression. Keller, 2001. The Soviet collapse in 1991 marked a turning point. Newly independent Central Asian states, Zunyi Shibotai Yosi Songtai Jinkirti, Shenzhen states began rebuilding their Islamic heritage, reopening mosques and reviving religious practices. However, the legacy of Soviet suppression continues to influence the region's religious landscape, with debates over the role of Islam in public life persisting to this day. TAZA, 2017. Conclusion. A legacy of faith and resilience. The Soviet suppression of Islamic identity in Central Asia was a calculated attempt to erase a centuries-old faith from the region's cultural fabric. Mosques were shuttered, clerics imprisoned, and religious practices banned, Yet the spirit of Islam endured through the resilience of Central Asian Muslims. Their story is one of survival, a reminder that faith can withstand even the most oppressive regimes. As we reflect on this chapter of history, let us honor the courage of those who kept their beliefs alive in the face of adversity. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the sands of history. If you found this exploration of Central Asia's Islamic heritage compelling, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that illuminate the past. Your support helps us continue uncovering these narratives, and you can further assist by contributing financially through the links in the description. Together, let's keep history alive.